computer. So there we go. So we are back to week number 2 of our spirit group that's covering the book of A Religion of One's Own. And today we're going to be covering chapter 2 and 3. And so without any further ado, I'm just going to dive in. In my page numbers are different than your page numbers. I can already tell because I've got the hardcover book. Most of you have the soft cover book. So I'm going to try and reference to the best of my ability the paragraphs where I'm highlighting this stuff. Right away, I think it's great because he starts talking about, and he talks about this chapter is called The Natural Mystic. And so really he's bringing up two concepts, the concept of being a mystic, and he's also bringing up nature. And I love that because immediately he in the second paragraph, he just said, I had a close encounter with nature. And the reason that's drawing so near and dear to my heart is because, as many of you know, I just spent 4 days out in nature doing a fast and being exposed to it. And it was one of the most profound things I've ever done. And so he really talks about, in terms of your own building your own religion, maybe considering using nature. And then there's a paragraph that I think is so beautiful. He talks about the mystics, and he says it starts off with many people. So many people have a negative attitudes towards mysticism and often use the word mystic pejoratively to indicate someone who is seriously and deliriously out of touch with reality. As a student of religion, I say the opposite. Mystics are the ones who have actually gotten in touch with what is real. They have they have powers of receptivity and sympathy that are particularly acute. They are porous and have the ability to be so open as to stretch beyond the usual small and protective ego. And they are often unusually courageous. Out of that wide and sometimes painful stretching of an ego, they find ethical opportunities special to them. Love that paragraph. Love it.
Yeah.
Further on down in the section that starts off with Simon Wheel, an unaligned mystic. And I love, one of the things I love about this book, I really enjoy, is he he introduces you to a lot of different people and the way that they've decided to live their life. And that's one of the things that I think are great, because literally, if I were to go through this book, there's probably 30 different people that he mentions, and you could do a deep dive into any one of them. And I just think that's really, really cool. And so I love it. You know, he's going to start introducing some more people as we go throughout the course of the book. But he does quote Simon in the paragraph that Simone, excuse me.
Simone, yes.
He starts off the paragraph with her penetrating mind, and then he says, she's quoted, each religion is alone true. That is to say that at the moment we're thinking of it, we must bring as much attention to bear on it as if it were nothing else. A synthesis of religion implies a lower quality of attention. So it's just this idea of really, really focusing in if that's where you're going, then fine. Let's do that. Let's focus on it, right? And I love that. In the following paragraph, it starts off with the sentence I just highlighted was, she also demonstrates that a religion of one's own is more than an intellectual piecing together of a puzzle culled from the traditions. Your religion makes a real demand on you. And I love that because, you know, I often get up, and what does that sound like when I'm up there on Sunday mornings talking to everybody? What it sounds like is me telling you, you should have a practice. You know, a religion of your own is actually a practice. And that practice can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There is no one size fits all. And so the thing that I say is go figure out what that looks like for you. What is the thing that brings you back into alignment and joy and happiness and connection with not only yourself, but then the divine and or God, right? And so I love that. She goes on to say in the same paragraph, your religion isn't complete without an ethical vision, right? And so it's interesting how sometimes I think people honestly go off the deep end and just say, hey, whatever goes. And I don't buy that. I think that there's an ethical when you're looking at it and doing it, I think there's an ethical thing to take into consideration. Okay, in the section mystical possibilities in the ordinary, a couple of paragraphs. A paragraph starts with anyone can be an ordinary mystic. You may not experience a loss of the ego, but now and then you'll feel lifted out of your body and become lost in a beautiful piece of art or a scene of nature. And the reason I love that, again, what is your medicine? What is it for you that makes you pause and so appreciate? And he talks about this later, but this idea of just pausing and it just captures you. It just causes you to stop, where you lose all track of time, whether you're looking at a beautiful piece of art, whether you're listening to a beautiful piece of music, whether you're having a conversation with a dear friend. What is it that causes time to stand still for you and feels like there's something bigger going on? I remember there are times when I have conversations with people, and it's the craziest thing. It doesn't always happen, but what happens is everything around me goes blurry, and there's just like this creation that happens between me and that person, and time completely is gone. It does not exist. And what's interesting is when that happens is I've literally had that happen for 2 or 3 hours, having conversations with whoever, whenever it happens. And when we're done with the conversation, I'll look down and be like, oh my God, what just happened? And the truth is time stood still. It did what it did, but it's magical. The next paragraph starts, in a religion of one's own, occasional simple mystical moments are sufficient. Again, there's going to be a more of a talk about these simple moments. And to me, when you can make a simple moment one of the most prized possessions on life, you got it. You figured it out. And it's just finding the profound in the simple little things, I think is such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So a little bit further down, I love this idea. In fact, this is something I'm absolutely going to do, is it talks about you can make a little ritual of visiting a special place in nature. Well, I've got a lot of different special places, but the land that I'm on now, it's so big, it's 26 acres. I walk all over it. It's beautiful, but I never thought of finding a really specific place and go, this is the spot that I'm going to go to, and this is a spot that I'm going to make magical and special when I'm on the land. So I love that. He goes on later in a couple of paragraphs down. Many people find their mystical side spending hours in garden. He has his piano. His wife paints and does yoga. So the question that brings to mind is, what is yours? What is it that takes you to that mystical space, right? For me, I'll share with you that I am somebody that spends anywhere from an hour to 2 hours to 3 hours in the morning. That's my time. I get up early, and it is my sacred time where I pray, I meditate, I write, I journal, I listen. And I've had that practice for a long time. And I will also tell you that that is something that changes in terms of what I do within those times. Is constantly changing. If I were to go back and look at the last probably 25 years since I've been doing that, it started off looking like one thing, and right now it's completely different, and it's constantly changing and morphing into something else. So anyway, just to share that with you, in the paragraph that says, sometimes the inscrutable texts, a sentence down from there, one of the benefits of a religion of one's own is its ordinariness and simplicity. So what does that mean? You don't have to make it complicated. You don't. It was interesting. I was reading a quote from, and I know some of you people know who Dolores Cannon is. She's wonderful. She's passed now.
Yes.
She is
Love her.
Yeah, she's an absolute, I love her too. And one of the things she said was, if you can't meditate, just pause before you take a sip of coffee. And then she says, if you can't exercise, and then she says 2 or 3 things where if you can't do it, then do this. And she said, don't be so rigid. Ultimately, what she says is, don't be so rigid. It doesn't mean oh, I can't meditate for a half hour today. Well, I'm not going to do it. Well, why don't you just, like she said, just pause, make it simple, don't complicate it. And that's the one thing I would really encourage, is that when you make your own practice, don't make it so complicated that it feels like, okay, well, I got a checklist every time I sit down, because sometimes it's just about allowing spirit to come in and say, hey, why don't we look at this? Like, it is crazy to me. And this is where the dance for me becomes really, really fun. A couple of nights ago, I had somebody reached out who I'd met a few weeks ago, and we had a brief conversation, and he was telling me, wow, man, you said something that really touched me. I'd love to have that conversation and take it further. And I said, sure. And so we got on a Zoom call the other night, and we had a pretty long conversation. It was pretty amazing. And he is starting to have his awakening, and which is really beautiful. And of course, when you start going through that, it can be a little bit, I don't know what's going on, but something's going on, and there's no, it's kind of hard when that first starts to happen to people. And so I was just sharing with him some thoughts or ideas on things he could consider doing. But I said, let me be with that and really see what it feels like. I'm guided to share with you. And sure enough, yesterday morning when I got up to do my prayers, often what happens is, believe it or not, I will actually go. I've got, I don't know, probably 50 or 60 people at least that I follow on YouTube, and occasionally I'll just go into there and just pop up something that just inspires me, grabs my attention. Sure enough, I pull up this video, and it's a video, it's a message from Archangel Michael, and it really talks about this idea of people going through their awakening process. I mean, it could not have been. There is no freaking way that that could have happened. You know what I mean? So in other words, I don't look at that as, oh, well, that was just a random. No, it was not random. That was meant to be shared with this person. And sure enough, I sent him the video and everything else like that. But to me, that's what makes the dance so fun, is that when spirit is coming and you're open to, hey, it doesn't need to look like A, B, C, or D. It can be however spirit needs to get through and talk to me. I'm going to be open to that. And you would be amazed at how many times I just open up my little YouTube page, and it's like the first part or the thing that I do in the morning. And then all of a sudden, my God, there's 500 videos I could watch, but all of a sudden one will grab my attention, and then I'll listen to it and it'll be like the exact thing that I was needing, or somebody I needed to share it with was needing. And so I love that.
Great.
And this is, and then, and speaking of that, she goes on further in that paragraph. She goes on to say, you can sit in your home as Thoreau did, and attentive his suggestion. We are surrounded by a rich, fertile mystery. I love that. May we not probe it, pry into it, and employ ourselves about it a little. So in other words, what if you were to actually think about this thing and understand that in any single moment there's this fertile mystery, and it's just just a little bit curious, just being a little bit curious, like what could possibly be here for me that I'm not seeing, that I'm not understanding, that I'm not hearing, right? What could it be? And I love that.
Don't you feel like life is a fertile mystery? I mean, I do feel that all of life
Yeah,
is a.
absolutely. Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
tell me where are you? Because I am
Yeah,
kind of.
it's in the section called Mystical Possibilities in the Ordinary, and I'm down about 7 or 8 paragraphs.
It's bottom of page 43 in the paperback.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I thought you had shot way. Okay, thank you, everyone.
No. I'm sorry.
No, it's not your
And
fault.
if you get lost, just let me know. All right. So then and then Thoreau's advice echoes the ancient Tao Te Ching: see simplicity in the complicated, achieve greatness in little things. Again, it reminds me of the story I told when I was on my journey out in the woods, watching a spider build its web, and how magical that was for me as I sat there and watched the spider do this for an hour. It was incredible. And then just the comment about the frog, the Zen practice, and the comment when the person wants to be a frog, and the person says when something to eat comes by, they go like this, gulp. And that's it. They never miss anything, and they're always calm and
I
still.
like that little
And,
story.
and he says he wishes he could be the frog. Um, Further on down, it's really fun. He starts picking different things to just, what magic can you make out of the little things? Like, look at your chairs. He talks about the whole section about chairs. He talks about flowers. And then he's talking about his friend Kevin. And then he says in the paragraph that starts off, and I'm on page 45 now, Kevin's teachings and artistic practices. And then later in that paragraph, the formal religions can teach us how to generate our own language and our own practices. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Several paragraphs down, the paragraph starts with the ability to lose yourself regularly in the sublime or the beautiful, even in the most ordinary settings, can make you a mystic. I love that. I love those few sentences. I'm going to move forward a little bit into the section that's called the Ordinary Mystics, and starts off right away. It says, a religion of one's own may arise out of an experience that shakes you up. And just goes on to talk about sometimes that can be the awakening. That can be the awakening moment. In the paragraph below that, in creating a religion of one's own, you could be open to moments when your sense of self expands and the boundaries melt. The result is not really a loss of self, but an increase. The edges become softer, and although a rigid ego, the experience may be frightening. If you're prepared, the mystical moment may allow you to enter life more fully.
Yeah,
You feel more yourself and less lost in the negative sense. Love that. Love that. He goes on to tell a big story about his uncle, which I think is kind of interesting. And in that story, I'm going to skip over to I'm on page 50, and the paragraph starts off with, the man was something of a mystic, a very ordinary mystic who lived his life in tune with the seasons and the changing sky and landscape. He could communicate with the animals with just a nod or a look, sometimes a hardly perceptible sound. He had a habit of checking the movements of the wind, the clouds, and the feeling of moisture in the grasses. He often mystified me because he had the powers that I'd never witnessed in my life in the city. And it's just because he was in tune with nature. He obviously was a farmer, and he could feel and perceive the things that most people don't. So I think that's really, really beautiful. Several paragraphs down, I'm on page 52. There's a paragraph that starts off that says, let us pause here for a general observation. And then he goes on to say, many people who create a religion like his uncle would never use terminology for what they do. In fact, if they were to even mention it, they would get scared. And then he goes on to say that they describe their lives as a religion in an informal way. I call them mystics because they found a portal to the transcendence. Though they use no formal spiritual or theological language. To me, I think sometimes the most beautiful, incredible spiritual people I know don't have a clue, are absolutely clueless that that's what they're doing. And I often say this, one of my best friends is an atheist, and he's one of the most spiritual people I've ever met in my entire life. He's a beautiful soul. And he just, by turning that off, he's been able to figure it out. So it was really kind of a cool way that his own journey worked for him. Nature's divinity here, where he starts getting really into some stories in the Bible and nature. And then on page 54, which is where I'm at, one of the things that he brings up here, which I think is really beautiful, there's a paragraph that starts off with, what can we learn about creating one's own religion, from James Hillman. Again, another person you could do a deep dive into. And what he talks about is the focus on contemplation. I just wanted to bring that up because in my experience, that I think part of your religion should be an honest time for contemplation about your life. Are you happy? Are you doing what you want to do? Is it giving you what you want it to give, or is it not? And if it's not, are you doing something about it? So it's just this idea of just being contemplative. And I know that there's something called contemplative prayer, which is a whole nother conversation, but this is a little bit different. This is actually taking time and spending time just thinking about those questions on a regular basis and looking at that, right? All right, so the next section he talks about is just more nature, the blue sky, and he brings up Georgia O'Keeffe. I'm not. A lot of people are aware of her and her work. I am not, so I don't want to sit there and pretend that I am. But he certainly talks quite a bit about her, which is great. He talks about in the following sections. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but he talks about sex and death, which is really, really fun to consider putting into your own little piece of your own religion. I'm going to skip all the way forward up into page 59, which talks about the natural mystics. And the first paragraph, you don't need to meditate formally for hours or swoon from the absorption in the infinite. All you have to do is pull over when you're driving on a highway, get out and watch the sunset. How cool is that? Right? How cool is that? Like in any given moment, I'm just going to stop and appreciate it. A couple of paragraphs down, it says one of the things you might want to consider doing is become involved with an established monastery or spiritual community. Wow, that might be an interesting concept. All right, so that's it on that particular chapter. And then again, what we're going to do is I'm going to go through and do the next one, and then we're going to pause, and then we're going to open up to let everybody else jump in. So this is interesting. Chapter 3, in a nutshell, is his own belief that he thinks that everybody should have a dream practice, and that is paying attention to your dreams. Now, I'm just going to share something. Dreams are something that I used to not have a lot of. And it's not that I didn't try. I did, but I did. Some people dream a lot, some people don't. I don't, as a general rule of thumb. But as I read this section, I have to be honest, I thought to myself, man, that might be something to take a look at. Because the one thing that I have had in my life, and I'm grateful I don't have this dream anymore, but one of the things I can tell you is I used to have this recurring dream, which was really interesting. So I love golf. I never was very good at it, but I love to play the game and I love the history of it. It's always something that has fascinated me. And in my dream, this recurring dream that I would have when I was struggling in my life was that I would be going up to, for those of you that understand or play the game of golf, I would go up to the tee, I'd put the ball on the tee and I'd get ready to hit my shot, but I wouldn't hit the shot. And I would wiggle around and I would sit there and say, oh, it's not perfect. It's not right. I can't hit it. And the wind's not right. And I would wake up so frustrated. And that dream happened to me over and over and over and over and over again until I finally realized what it was telling me. And what it was telling me was that me hitting that ball was me making a decision in life and moving forward with my life. I was afraid to make decisions, and me not hitting the ball was me not making a decision and moving forward in my life. And I would wake up from those dreams so frustrated. I'd be like, oh my God, hit the damn ball, Mike. That's literally what I would be doing as I was dreaming this, right? And I would say in terms of my experience with dreams, that was probably the most profound thing or experience that I've ever had. But the rest of it is not great. And when I read this chapter, I'm just going to mention some parts of it, but the entire chapter is about your dream practice and what it could look like if you decided to incorporate a dream practice into your religion, right? And again, I don't know. There's a part of me that it's really just the whole entire section. He's just basically explaining how he uses it, explaining it how a couple of his clients, how he helped them with their dream things. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think it's necessary for me to go through and try and sell you on having a dream practice. He does it, right? And there's not, that's the whole chapter. So I don't really feel like I need to go through and highlight the different things other than to tell you, like, for example, in the section called a dream practice, for me, that's on page 73. There is a section kind of like a how-to. And so if that would help you, well, then there you go. Then it starts off several paragraphs down in that section. It starts off with dreams fade quickly from consciousness, so it's important to catch them as soon as possible. So the next paragraph or two after that is kind of like a how-to. So if that helps you, then great, that helps you. Okay. Again, the whole chapter is just about dreams, and I don't really feel it's necessary, because he's just, the whole thing is about incorporating dreams into it, and a couple of stories about some clients and some reasons why you might want to consider it. And I think the one thing I will say though is that, I mean, his passion for creating a dream, I mean, somewhere in here he says that basically, he can't imagine having, he's a psychotherapist for 30 years and he can't imagine not ever having somebody record their dreams. I mean, he's really powerful in terms of his conviction for having and following your dreams. So having said that, I think that we're good, like in terms of reviewing those two chapters.